We did it.
And
We're
we're
recording.
live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Transpotting. My name is Marcia, and...
Are you sure?
It's Marcia for long, Marcia for short. And welcome to Transpotting. Today we have a very lovely guest. My co-hosts are here with me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Celeste. I'm here. You know, I'm queer. We're doing our thing.
I'm River, or Riv. I'm also queer, also doing my thing.
Wow, what a coincidence. I'm
What a
also queer and
coincidence.
doing my thing.
Whoa.
You
It's
could have fooled
lovely.
me.
Our guest today is Sophie. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what your focus area is?
I mean, I don't want to be a combo breaker, so yeah, I'm also queer and doing my thing.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm Sophie. I am the host of We Have Always Existed, which is a YouTube series where I create long-form video essays on the wealth of history that we have from the ancient Mediterranean around transgender topics.
Awesome.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's so cool.
Thank you, thank you. I think so too, that's why I make them.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a show if Marcia didn't drop something.
It's true.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Is
I'm
this
just giving you
always
tradition?
shit.
something.
It's tradition. As
It's
is
tradition.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, thanks for having me on
Thank you for
on this
joining us.
lovely
We're
little
really
show.
excited to have you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
When
So
did you
I-
get Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I reached out to y'all like a long time ago, and never heard anything back, and that's okay. I forgive you. You're forgiven. We can be friends. That's cool. And I got an email, I think like last week or something, and it was out of the blue and quite a pleasant little surprise. So
Yeah, that's my fault. Our intake form was broken for a bit, and I didn't
boy.
notice it until I decided to go check on it recently. And I was like, oh, there's stuff here, and it hasn't been alerting anyone. Oh, no wonder
Isn't that
why.
fun?
It's fun. Technology's great.
isn't it?
We can always blame technology for our own shortcomings. And that's lovely.
For sure.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I do.
Sophie, when did you get started making videos, and what inspired you to do it on this topic?
Yeah, so I started in, well, in 2020 when we were all locked down and we all had a lot more free time all of a sudden. People were popping up learning how to bake bread or learning how to crochet or do this or that, and I've always had an interest in history. There's my history degree on the wall back there. So I've always, you know, it's a degree in classical studies, which is the focus of my channel. And hanging out in trans circles, you hear people talk about stuff, or this transgender emperor or whatever, and it was intriguing to me, and I'd heard glimmers of these things throughout my degree, but all my professors were cis professors teaching cis history. I don't know.
Cis heteronormative history.
Great. There's that's anyway. So it was mostly old white guys, and they were teaching from the perspective of old white guys, which is, you know, that does give you something. But I remember hearing glimmers of these topics, but never really dug too much into them because I was too busy suppressing things at the time. And so once I saw people start talking about this stuff, it's like, oh cool, well let's do some more research. And then I found very little in the way of like stuff that was written that was thorough and nuanced, but was also written for like the average person, not like a like ivory tower academic sort of stuff. It was either super heavy stuff that was way too difficult to dig through for the average person, or like just like listicles in whatever magazine that like didn't go in depth into things and reported it wrong, because like reporting on history is kind of like reporting on science, like nobody does it right. And so I figured somebody should do this, and I don't know, fuck it, I know how to do it, and I know enough about this stuff. I guess somebody's got to do it, and it may as well be me. So here I am.
That's so cool.
I'm really
that's
proud
just
of you
so
for
cool.
saying
That's
that.
really awesome.
Because, yeah.
For saying fuck it.
If we're saying fuck it, somebody's got to do it. It's going to be me.
You literally
Yeah.
said fuck it, we ball about history.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love this.
pretty much.
That's really cool. My minor is in history. My major is in journalism, but I took a minor in history just because I love history. So, yeah. Oh, are you still there? You cut out. Oh, there you are.
I'm curious as
No.
what's your process?
Hang
Can
on
you
one
hear me?
sec.
Oh, we still
Can't
can't,
hear
hear
you.
you. Yeah, sorry.
We can edit this part out.
Yeah.
Never. We don't want to, cover up history. History being
We're making it right now.
technical issues occurred.
Well, this gives us a good time for more bullshitting.
We never bullshit. What are you talking about?
Who the fuck do you think we are? We're serious. Serious folk here.
We're serious Pulitzer Prize winning journalists.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. One new chat message.
She had just said
LOL,
LLBRB.
I feel like I've seen some of her videos.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. Where did my... Oh no, I lost some of my controls. Ooh, there we go. Okay. So, Sel, you've got new hair.
I got new hair.
Tell us about it. Well, I mean, it's the same hair,
wa-
but it's different color.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was more pink. It has kind of faded at this point. And of course we're going blurry now, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like a pinkish blonde. I love it though.
Very cute.
It's the first
Very
time
cute.
I've ever bleached my hair. I went somewhere. I didn't do it, but it's the first
Okay,
time my
good,
hair's ever
good.
been bleached. It's fucking cool.
Hey, gang, sorry about that.
Oh no, you're okay.
It's totally fine.
My microphone cable is not super secure, and I can't help it. I'm Italian. I talk with my hands, so I often pull. This happens all the time. It's a real problem. I need a better cord. Anyway, I'm back. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Hi, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Celeste, you were just telling me
Let's
about your
take a
degree.
second to get recentered. Inhale. Hold. And
You're not my mom. You're not the boss of me.
Marcia, I wasn't doing that.
I purposely started hyperventilating just to go against what you're saying.
So, Sophie, you've been making videos for what, over 2 years now?
Something like that. Yeah, I think the first one came out in very early 2021 or late. No. When the hell was it? Yeah, late 2021, I think.
Is there something that you've come through? Can you tell us first about a little bit what your research process is like and how you prepare? Do you prepare scripts for your videos, or how does that work?
Oh yeah. It is a long process. What you see in my videos is the culmination of quite literally hundreds of hours of research that goes into each one of these videos. That's why I don't do that many of them that often, because it takes so much work. And I start with a topic idea. Sometimes I hear just people talking about it. Sometimes it's stuff I've wondered about over the years. And sometimes it's requests I get from people who like the channel. So I start with an idea, and I start with, oh, there's a glimmer of something here. And then I dive in and I do research. And I try not to come from the perspective of, this is my conclusion, this is a transgender person in history, here's the evidence to support it. I come more from this sounds trans, let's find out something more about it. And sometimes, like with the Elagabalus video that I did, the conclusion was, we don't know and we probably won't ever know, which is not always the most satisfying conclusion to come to. But I don't know, I don't want to be like the right-wingers, right, where you have an idea and you look for evidence to support it. I want to look at the evidence and come to the conclusion that I come to, however that conclusion, whatever that conclusion is, even if it's not the most satisfying one. So that's, I do a lot of reading of primary sources, as well as a lot of scholarly research as well. There's a shelf full of both primary and secondary resources on the shelf behind me, and sometimes it's easy to come by. Sometimes I have to, with one of the videos I'm working on, which I've been working on, almost 2 years at this point. It's ridiculous how long it's taking me, because sources are mostly like books that have been out of print since the 70s. So I have to like hunt them down on eBay and pay way too goddamn much money for them. Or I have to like go to the local university library and hope I can find them, or go to university libraries in other cities and try to find them there. So it's quite the arduous process sometimes.
Yeah. So one thing that you said there kind of stuck out to me. You're looking mostly for primary resources, but how do you parse, like, through history, what it has meant to be trans? I'm sure it just looks vastly different from now versus, year 300. And how do you parse the culturalness of it all?
Absolutely. That's a really important question. And it's sometimes I'll see a lot of trans history is couched in this like, oh, well, there was no such thing as transgender back then, so it's not really transgender history, but blah, blah, blah. And it's easy to get bogged down in that sort of thing of like, oh, this, we have to define certain things in certain ways. But there was no such thing as a cis person back then either. And that doesn't stop people from seeing themselves in, I don't know, dude bros seeing themselves in Spartan warriors and stuff like that, right?
Sure.
So it's not like, well, actually, there's no such thing as a cis man back then, so I'm sorry, you can't, there's no such thing.
Video over.
Yeah, it's absurd, right? So you get bogged down in this, like, silly ideas about definitions and, like, oh, well, was it this, was it that? And so, actually, the trans historian Susan Stryker has a really, really good definition of, pardon me, of what transgender history means in a historical context. And it's the definition that she has is basically people who move away from the expectations provided by their society and around their gender. I'm not doing a very good job of summarizing this. Let me find it quickly, actually, because it's a really great definition. She says it in the very first page of her book, which is it's fantastic. It's quite well written, despite the fact that it's called transgender history and it's only American transgender history, which I don't super love, but it's okay.
Gotta have those fancy titles. Susan Stryker is kind of famous.
Yeah, no, she's awesome.
Yeah.
No complaints there. But anyway, so it's I can't find it, but what she's getting at is basically like if you transgress the gendered expectations of your society, then that can be considered transgender in a historical sense. So it's a different way of using and defining the word than how we use it just kind of like in a colloquial sense, as you and I might talk about being trans or whatever. It's obviously not the same thing, but it's okay because it of course it's not the same thing. People are not the same as they were 2,000 years ago. We are, but we aren't. So that kind of just sidesteps that whole complicated mess and allows you to get into the stuff that's actually interesting, which is to say that yes, there are people who transgress gender norms 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago. We can put all that aside and we can get into what's actually interesting about history.
It's a really good answer.
And I feel like it kind of becomes like an issue with semantics. Like, the trans experience is one that people throughout history have always experienced, but it hasn't always been called that or hasn't always had terminology associated with it. So when we're going back and looking at it with trying to put modern words onto it, well, it doesn't fit because they didn't have those modern words and they didn't have those concepts. But they still experienced the emotions and the feelings and the things that we go through. So it's fascinating to see. Is there a particular historical story or person that you have a favorite telling that story?
I mean, the catalyst for what got me started on this series was both the first video I did was just kind of like an introduction to trans history, but then I did one on my first two were the Scythians and Elagabalus, and I really enjoyed doing those ones. I keep having in the back of my head that I want to redo the Scythians one because I really didn't know what I was doing in terms of making videos. I still think the research is fairly solid, but the camera quality is terrible. The audio quality is terrible. It's a mess. It's a mess. So I really want to redo it, but I thought that that topic was so interesting from like the what ifs of history are often more interesting than the facts we actually have. And the question is like, did the Scythian transgender priestesses, the Inari, did they figure out how to use distilled pregnant horse urine to figure out a, not prehistoric, but ancient form of transfeminine HRT 2,500 years ago? Maybe we don't actually know, but like the fact that we're asking that question in the first place is it's pretty wild. Like the possibilities, the ingredients are there. I wish we had conclusive evidence. We don't, but it was still just so fascinating to dig into that. And
could you give a short summary of that for our listeners who haven't heard it? Maybe me also.
Sure. Well, just so you know, there's a video on it on the channel. So if you
but I can't watch a video in the middle of this interview.
I mean, you totally could. We can just put it on, and we can just
instead of
The rest of the interview is just us playing the video. That's all it is.
I'm vain
Talk
enough
about
that I'd be
promotion.
okay with that. So
Don't worry, we'll make sure we promote your video stuff.
Yes.
Links and everything.
yeah, so thank you, I appreciate it. So the Scythians were a culture that lived around pardon me, there's a wide swath of territory they had. It's all the way from like northeastern China, kind of close to where Korea is now, all the way to the Black Sea. So it's a huge swath of territory.
The Scythians were like steppe people, right? Nomadic and
and it was it's a broad variety of different cultures that had similar practices that we grouped together as Scythians, but they were an illiterate culture, and it's a huge amount of territory and a long time ago. So the Scythians close to Manchuria and the Scythians close to the Black Sea almost certainly didn't know about each other. And if they did, it's not like it would really matter one way or another, right? So we know the most about the Black Sea Scythians because even though they didn't write, they lived close to the Greeks, and the Greeks wrote a lot, and they wrote about them a little bit. And they were nomadic, they were illiterate, they wandered, they were nomadic. And among their people were a group called the Enari, and they were a form of priestess, soothsayer sort of thing. We don't have any evidence from them, but we have Herodotus, who wrote about them, and we also have Pseudo-Hippocrates, who wrote about them. And Herodotus, father of history, wrote a lot of history, not always the most credible guy. He makes a lot of stuff up, and he admits that too. He's like, there's one section which I've always loved where he's talking about something happening in the court of the Persian king Xerxes, and his introduction was, I wasn't there and I don't know what he said, but here's what he might have said. And then he makes up this whole conversation between him and his court, and it's this is complete fabrication. This is fiction, right? You're making this up.
It's a real stone tablet turner is what it is, though.
Totally. They couldn't carve them out fast enough for the ancient audience.
Tap faster.
So there's Herodotus who wrote about it, and Pseudo-Hippocrates, which is there's this manuscript called the Hippocratic Corpus, which is credited to Hippocrates, the Hippocratic Oath guy. Almost certainly not written by him, almost certainly not written by one guy, but we don't know anything otherwise, so we just call it Pseudo-Hippocrates, because, I don't know, what else are you going to call it? So there's one text in there, it's called On Airs, Waters, and Places, and they talk about, whoever it is that wrote that, talked about the Inari as well. And they describe them as having a female sickness. They dressed like women, they looked like women, they acted like women, and they served a woman's role in Scythian society. And that sounds pretty trans to me.
That sounds really trans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's still cis though. Hashtag.
Down with the woman sickness. Come on, get down with the woman sickness.
Good Lord.
That's what they were singing about.
Yeah, of course. And so there's like a lot of questioning of like, what was this about? Like, what was the female sickness? And some scholars have said, oh, it must just be impotency, which like, okay. But like, where did that idea doesn't really hold a lot of water. There's not a lot of like real solid evidence that it would have been referring to impotence, especially since they refer to the impotence of Scythian men, because apparently that was a thing, because they were on horseback and they wore tight pants, so a lot of them were impotent apparently. And so he talks about impotence in other parts, but he doesn't refer to it as a female sickness. So it's like, what is this thing? What does that mean? And so fast forward, those guys wrote in like the 6th century BCE, if I recall correctly. I could be wrong there. I think it's the 4th century, maybe 5th. Anyway, they wrote in the BCE era. And so fast forward to the 1st century CE, we have the Roman poet Ovid, famous for the Metamorphoses and some other poems. He wrote around the same time Virgil did. He wrote during the reign of the Emperor Augustus, the first emperor. And at some point, he did something to upset Augustus so much that Augustus banished him from the empire altogether. We don't know what happened. There's a lot of conjecture. We think maybe he like insulted Augustus's daughter or something like that. We don't know exactly what happened. But anyway, he was banished from the empire, and the Roman Empire is really big, so like he's got to go far, right? Like he's living in Rome, and he's like, no, not only do you have to leave the city, you have to leave the empire altogether. So he ends up today the city is called Constanta. It's in Romania, which is pretty close to where the Scythians lived. And he spent the rest of his life there and wrote a lot of sad boy stuff because he didn't like living there. He missed Rome. Like he's a book nerd, right? He likes the libraries, he likes reading, he likes spending time with other literati, and now he's living among barbarians. Like, this sucks. So one poem he wrote, he talks about this like old hag type of character named Dipsas, who knows how to extract they use the word virus, which is a Latin word that means, it's spelled the same as virus, but it doesn't mean virus. It means kind of like it can be used as poison. It can also be used as like the active ingredient sort of thing. And it is known that extracting the active ingredient from pregnant horse urine is like, the active ingredient is estrogen. It is the most concentrated place you can find estrogen outside of like a laboratory, to the point where the birth control pill that cis women use sometimes, Premarin, that is literally a portmanteau of pregnant mare urine. Premarin, right? So we know, and Ovid wrote about that as well. He's got another text called on cosmetics. I don't recall the name at the moment, but in that text he talks about how it is known that using pregnant mare urine is a beautifying treatment, and you put estrogen on your face, it makes your face look younger, right? So we know Ovid knew about getting estrogen from pregnant horse urine. We know he wrote about someone who also knew how to do that while he was living among the Scythians. We know the Inari had a female sickness and looked like women. And that's all we know. And I hate that that's the
Connecting
end.
the dots.
I hate that that's the end. Like, all the ingredients are there to have figured out transfeminine HRT 2,500 years ago. It's possible. We don't know, and I wish we did.
And since it's not written by any of the primary people who were, none of these are primary accounts, they're all secondary accounts of somebody outside that culture looking in. Yeah. And since they were in a literate culture, everything was probably passed down via word of mouth, and that gets lost easily through history.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so fascinating, though. I really love that idea. I like those not prehistoric, but like pre-modern forms of HRT that you sometimes see occasionally popping up somewhere. Oh, that one's fascinating. That one's
old DIY HRT just dropped. Not new, but old.
Old.
BRB going to the stables.
Are there other groups throughout history? Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's why in the thumbnail for the video, it's got me holding a glass of beer. Like, with...
Yeah, that tastes like horse piss, so...
Depends on what you're drinking, but yeah.
And not that I've ever drank horse piss, but now I'm interested.
Thanks for clarifying. Appreciate that.
Oh, Marcia.
You never know in this community.
We like to have fun here. Are there other groups that figured out forms of HRT before the modern era? I feel like that can't be the only one.
You're probably right in that regard. I don't actually know. I've not found anything else. That's not to say it doesn't exist. I just haven't found it myself yet. And it's almost certain that they figured it out later as well. But my historical focus is the ancient Mediterranean, which is like the Romans and earlier. Sometimes I get into some prehistoric stuff. Not in anything I've published yet, but yeah, the Romans and earlier is my main focus, so it's possible, but I haven't seen anything.
Sorry. I should do like an avatar cough whenever we have dead air.
It's just a lot to digest and, think about, and just, I don't know. I can't help but have it just like put a smile on my face of just, I don't know. We've always found a way.
Absolutely.
And that's cool. There's a certain kind of like special perseverance in that.
Kind of reminds us that we were never alone.
Finds a way.
Yeah.
That's why I called the channel We Have Always Existed, because we have.
Mm-hmm.
We have. Like and one of the things that made me want to make the channel as well was like, there is so much said about us, and it's all lies, right? There's so many lies about us out there right now. And I mean, the channel is not for cis people. Cis people can watch it, that's fine, but it's not geared towards cis people. But if you're like, if you are just kind of figuring yourself out, you're new to realizing that you're not exactly the gender you were when you popped out of into the world. If you don't know any better, you could be forgiven for thinking that being trans is this isolated thing in the modern moment. That's this new idea that's popped up, but it's not. And I think I mentioned in the first video that I recorded 1 million years ago, we deserve to know our own histories, and we deserve to own our own histories. And so, stuff like this, like, it's really cool. It's really interesting, and it's really fascinating that, like, we figured out how to exist in one way or another. And we're always gonna. So long as humans persevere, trans people will still exist. And that's just part of the human experience. So knowing this history for a lot of girls, I think, is like, I mean, you're not the only person who's ever told me, like, learning about this stuff puts a smile on your face, right? Like, it's really awesome. And again, nobody was doing it, so somebody had to.
It's really cool to learn a little bit about that stuff and to remember that we haven't ever been alone. And as someone who's kind of in the witchy pagan community too, it's been tough to kind of take on like worship of our ancestors, and without knowing anything, like, do we even have ancestors? And of course we do. So it's really awesome to get more info about who came before.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. And there's often been that spiritual aspect to it as well. With the, I just mentioned we just talked about the Scythians who were priestesses, and we know that we know they had one role at least, which was to figure out who was making the king sick if he was sick. Assuming he wasn't sick every day, so they must have had something else to do as well, but we don't know. But we know they served a spiritual role in their society. But there were the Galli as well, who were they came from the east. They came from Phrygia, which is like part of modern day Turkey, and we know most about their role in Rome, but they were worshippers of the goddess Cybele, and they have very, very strong transgender aspects to their story as well. It's probably like the clearest example of like, these are trans. You cannot deny it. It's very, very, very clear. They dress
could
like
you go
women.
through that?
Yeah, totally. Once I stop coughing up my own lungs here.
I deal with constant allergies. I have to clear my throat 1,000 times and mute my mic too, so don't feel bad.
Yeah.
Cool. Appreciate it. So Phrygia is in Anatolia, which is modern day Turkey. I don't know if you can see the map back there. That's not gonna happen. It's fine. So they had a I know, right? Get out your magnifying glass. They
Get the
had
laser pointer.
then my cat will get excited. They had
loves history too.
Yeah.
all the cat girls in the audience will get excited too.
So 100% of our audience.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's in Anatolia, which is modern day Turkey. They had a polytheistic religion. We only know about Cybele as one of the goddesses that they worshipped. We know they worshipped others. We don't know much about them. Cybele her aspects show up in a bunch of other different religious roles as well. She's got multiple different names. There are some strong transgender myths to her mythology, as well as her like attendant manservant sort of thing. Attis is his name. Hey, be nice. Cats are fighting. And so right, so she's got some really strong transgender motifs to her mythology, as well as her manservant Attis. There's a lot of castration going on there, and the Romans worshipped this goddess. They called her Magna Mater, the Great Mother, and the Greeks called her something else. I don't recall the exact name at the moment. But she had a bunch of different names. Her mythology is wrapped up in Aphrodite's mythology as well as Rhea and Gaia and a bunch of other stuff as well. But anyway, so the Romans are fighting the Second Punic War between them and Carthage. And this was like the last time that any power had any real chance of stopping the advance of Roman hegemony in the Mediterranean. And they came pretty close to doing it. So this is a pretty dire time for the Romans. They're hanging on tooth and nail. They're fighting for their lives. They have the Carthaginian general Hannibal, who is rampaging throughout Italy, getting a bunch of Roman allies to go over to his cause, defeating them in battle after battle after battle. There's one battle called the Battle of Cannae, where he defeats like a Roman army far, far larger than his. Basically what he does is he has his line, the Roman forces advance, and he has his line slowly start to retreat, but also keep the shape. So eventually the Romans are all in this sort of area. His forces are all around the edges, and then he has their cavalry come in and close them off. The Romans are completely surrounded, and they just get butchered. Tens of thousands of Roman soldiers butchered. And like, this is one-on-one combat with swords. So this butchering would have been happening over the span of like days. Like, your Roman soldier, like here, like, you know you're gonna die, but they're not gonna get to you for another couple of days. So like, anyway, just getting your head into that space is something. But anyway, so the Romans lost a lot of soldiers. It was a pretty dire time. They were starting to push Hannibal back out of Italy, and they were starting to invade Carthage, which is like modern day like Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, that sort of area. And they had this book called the Sibylline books, not the Kybali books, the Sibylline books, not related. And in that book, they had one of the oracles that it had. These were oracles purchased by one of the kings of Rome hundreds of years prior to this. And one of the oracles said, if you ever face a great foe, you will defeat them if you bring the Great Mother to the city. So they said, okay. So they went to Phrygia, to Pergamum, I think, the kingdom of Pergamum, which was an ally of Rome's. And they said, hey, we need to take the Great Mother. And they said, okay, sure, do it. So
What's the Great Mother in this context?
It's represented by this black stone. We think it was a meteorite, but it was a big black stone. And that was the physical manifestation of the Great Mother, we'll say. So they brought it to Rome, and the Galli priestesses came with her. And they, they castrated themselves. They wore women's clothing. They wore makeup. They wore tiaras. They wore jewelry. And they devoted their lives to the worship of Kybali. And, like, I'm sorry, that is trans. That is quite literally trans.
Yeah.
And so, like, sometimes I read some stories from, like, cis historians that are like, well, maybe they were cis men and they just felt really, really religious. And it's like, okay. So, there are lots of people who are very religious, that are very devoted to their God, who don't cut off their junk and live as a different gender.
Yeah.
So...
there's a different level of dedication going on here.
A little bit. It's like these people are just desperate to say like, no, they're not trans. They're not
It's
trans.
the equivalent of like,
yes.
oh, they were just roommates.
Totally
equivalent.
Same thing. Same thing.
I grew up very religious, and I tell you what, if there was a role in that in my religion, I would have jumped at that.
Right?
Yeah.
Same. Raised Roman Catholic.
I volunteer
Same.
as tribute.
Real.
Totally. But it's wild too, because like the we don't have anything written by Galli. We only have Romans talking about them, and they thought they were weird and kind of disturbing, so they basically locked them in the temple of Kybali, and they were only allowed out during the festivals devoted to Kybali. And so it was this group of trans femmes who spent all their time together in a building. What were they doing together? I don't
Probably
know.
religious rituals. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, sure, we'll go with that.
They were super devoted.
Spiritual experiences. It's fun to imagine that. We don't know. This is another example where the like what ifs of history are sometimes more fun than what you actually have. But there is Roman case law that says that talks about them, and so there is the situation involves a slave owner and two of his slaves. And these two slaves were freed. One of them decided to join the Galli. The other didn't. And they remained friends throughout their life. And the one who was not a Gala, died and left all of his stuff to the one who was a Gala. But the slave owner argued that the Gala person, I don't remember their name unfortunately, is not a man, because the castrated part, not a woman because he can't get pregnant, and so as a result cannot inherit according to Roman law, because they had separate laws over inheritance whether you were a man or a woman. And they argued this in court. Yes, I know, right? I know.
Yeah.
They argued this in court, and the court decided in favor of the slave owner. And so the Gala was not allowed to inherit the property of her friend who had left it to her. Terrible, sucks, very unfortunate. However, what that does is provide legal recognition for a third gender 2,000 years ago.
Oh, and Roman law,
Fascinating.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A persecuted gender. The best
I know,
kind.
right? Like, it's not like, oh wow, they've got such wonderful protections under Roman law. Like, no, it's not good. However, it's still recognition of
Yeah. It's not good, but it's still
gender.
recognized, yeah.
yeah, which is sometimes
Something.
It's something.
Somewhere to start.
A non-binary loophole.
exactly. And this one was written, I think it was 1st century CE. So like around the time of Christ. So like this non-binary recognition has been around since at least as long as Christianity has.
And that's just in the legal sense, let alone in a more interpersonal sense.
I mean, there's mentions of people who don't conform to gender norms in the Bible, too. Not necessarily always condemned, either. It talks about people who become eunuchs by choice. And it's like, that doesn't sound very cis.
Absolutely. That's what my last video was on. Yeah, it's all over the place. And angels are genderless. This is like well regarded and well established dogma. This isn't like woke stuff or whatever, right? Like this is well known. Anybody who knows anything about Christian dogma will accept this.
The woke Catholic Church.
Right.
There's people who think that, though, so...
Well, there's people who think a lot of things.
There's people who think anything.
Yeah. Anyway, I can talk about this stuff all day. I love it.
I love this.
Awesome.
So you've mentioned a couple examples of like trans feminine history. Is there trans masculine history as well that you could point out that is definitely less known to me, and I'm sure is probably a little less known to the audience as well?
Yes, this is not the first time I've been asked about that. To a certain extent, the channel does reveal my own biases. I've mostly focused on trans feminine stuff so far. I am going to be, my next video, or an upcoming video, I'll say, is going to be, because who the hell knows what's going to be next, God, is a video on the Roman satirist Lucian, who wrote a piece called The Dialogues of the Courtesans, which is almost like ancient comedy sketches, or ancient like little sitcoms almost, about dialogues between courtesans, prostitutes. And one of them talks about one courtesan talking to her friend who is, and her friend is like, "Oh, I heard you slept with that lesbian woman. Tell me more, tell me more." Lesbian in this case being from the island of Lesbos, but also being a lesbian. Because that was like
fun little coincidence there.
Yeah, well, I mean, coincidence. Lesbos is where Sappho was from.
Yeah, the OG
So-
lesbian. Yeah.
Right. So that would have been like that would have been understood in the ancient world as well as like, hey, look, she likes girls and she's from Lesbos. Isn't that funny? Like it would have been, the term lesbian wasn't really a thing other than someone from the island, but it would have been understood as, kind of a funny little thing. And she sleeps with a woman from Lesbos and her wife. But then when they actually sleep together, the woman from Lesbos, Megilla, pulls the wig off of their head and says, "My name is Megillus and I'm a man." And this is fiction, but then like the courtesan goes through this whole process is like, "Wait, what? Oh, so you're like disguised as a woman, but you're actually a man, kind of like Achilles was." And he's like, "No." And she's like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe you were turned into a woman and then turned back into a man, like Tiresias. I heard someone told me once that somebody told me that somebody told me once, and it's like she's like grasping at straws for all this type of stuff, and it's like it's really funny to watch because she's like she can't quite figure it out, and eventually he's like, no, I was born a woman, but I have the brain and the drives of a man. And it's like, well, that's pretty clear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even though it's fiction, so like it's less historical analysis than it is literary analysis, but there is still some history there too.
There's cultural understanding. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love how the cis people still have a hard time understanding it way back in the day.
I was going to say, it's such a universal trans experience of like, wait, what?
It's so funny. It's actually a really funny little little vignette. There's 15 little skits, and like some of them are depressing, some of them are sad, but some of them are very funny. It's a lot of fun. This one is not done yet, so I don't have quite the same like oomph to it that I do the other stories that we've talked about so far, because
Sure.
I finished that research. This one is still kind of rudimentary at this point, but it's still pretty transy. So there
That's
are
cool.
some other transmasculine topics as well. I haven't gotten into them yet, but I'm gonna, because trans men deserve to know their history too. They're
Absolutely.
they're part of the club. They get forgotten about pretty often. So
I feel like
They do.
trans men get the short end of the stick a lot of times through history because, historically women have had so little autonomy and rights over their own decisions that if a woman stands up and says, hey, or if society is perceiving somebody as a woman and they stand up and say, no, I want to be treated this way, a lot of people probably just wouldn't take them seriously.
yeah,
And I think that happens, like, unfortunately, a lot. But that's probably part of the reason why that is a little bit more harder to find stories about. That's just my own, like, feelings as a complete, like, layperson. Because I'm not a historian. I'm not a...
that's absolutely part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely part of it. There's also the the Venn diagram of overlap between transmasculine culture and lesbian culture. It's two different things, but there is more of an overlap there than there is like trans women and I don't know. I don't feel any particular affinity to cishet dude culture, and so like I don't think like maybe like straight trans women feel more of an affinity to gay men culture, but I don't know. They're more separate from each other is the point, and there is more of an overlap, and that's why like he him lesbians are a thing, and like she her straight guys aren't. I don't think. Maybe not to like disparage anybody if anybody does identify as that, my apologies, but I don't think it's as much of a phenomenon as he him lesbians are, and so there is more of that sort of overlap, and so in some cases diving into this stuff, it's sometimes hard to suss out: are you a trans man, are you a lesbian, are you both? It's not always as clear.
Yeah. It makes it a little tricky there, doesn't it?
There's layers, there's nuance.
It's a lot of layers.
Isn't being queer cool? There's just so much to it.
We get to be
mean, yeah.
complicated.
I know, right? Well, it's interesting
yeah.
to keep like hearing all these stories before there were terms and labels for all of this, right? And before society decided, oh, we have these buckets you need to fall into, and you're trans and you're lesbian, and maybe you're a little bit of both, and maybe you're this, and you're non-binary, but we're gonna put X as your gender instead of actually giving you other options.
Yeah.
Before all of that bullshit, people live their lives and they were still valid, and it still happened, and it's part of history. And it's cool to see that once again, we have always been here.
And pardon me. Yeah, there's in Roman culture, for example, they didn't have the idea of gay and straight or trans and cis. These were not concepts that occurred to them, but there were still people who transgressed gender norms, and there were still people who, slept with people of the same sex. Julius Caesar was famously described as every man's woman and every woman's man. And, there's question about whether or not that was just, slander. That happens a lot in the Roman historical records. But it's tempting to say, oh, well, Julius Caesar, bisexual icon. It wasn't, and, kinda, but also he wasn't, they didn't think to attach an identity to you based on who you slept with, like we do today, right? I'm hetero, I'm homo, I'm bisexual, I'm pansexual, I'm whatever.
And
it's not a bad thing, it's just not what they had.
From what I understand in Roman sexuality, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but who was on top and who was on bottom was more important than what gender you were.
Totally. That's the closest we have to gay and straight, is penetrator or penetrated. And if you were...
Being the penetrator was, you're doing good, you're okay. Being the penetrated was...
if you were a man.
Yeah.
If you were a man, yes.
Yeah.
You could sleep with as many guys as you wanted, and it wouldn't be a big deal. You wouldn't face any, social censure for it, so long as you were the top. Because that was, the whole idea was wrapped up in this idea that the Romans had of... It's sometimes translated as virtue, but that's, a huge, huge oversimplification. It was basically how, Roman men ought to act. And so it was things like controlling yourself, temperance, being wise, having foresight, being a leader, stuff like that. And the idea of bottoming was not considered temperate. It wasn't considered being in control of yourself. It was considered taking a woman's role, and as a result, taking a less than role, because they were just as sexist back then as they are today. So that was the point, right? If you were a Roman man and you wanted to sleep with dudes, you'd probably be sleeping with slaves, because, they're already kind of the bottom of the barrel as far as the social hierarchy goes. So it's not like they're going to lose any status, which I know this is all really messed up for me to say. Please don't I hope nobody edits this out of context.
We're not judging you for reporting history.
No.
Yeah.
Canceled right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Ancient Romans.
Sophie canceled for approving of Roman social hierarchies.
Do you think when all those cis males think and say about how they love to think about the Roman Empire, that this is what they're thinking about?
All I can think of is that someone has described what a power bottom is to the Roman Empire.
Good lord.
I love the idea that all of these men are just walking around saying they're the tops when they're not. I love that idea.
Yeah. I mean, if you're all dudes, and somebody's got to be the bottom.
Yeah. I can just imagine all the finger pointing matches. No, you were the bottom.
I mean, that's just for relationships in general, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
You're not wrong.
But honestly, talking about the Roman propaganda and slander, that's basically what that is.
Yeah. And so it's them slandering him because he fancies dudes. That's not the slander part. It wouldn't be that big a deal if you wanted to, head down to the slave brothel and get busy. But it was that he was the bottom. That was the problem.
Did you, what was that Roman emperor who was kind of a lot of people think is trans? It was Engolbus or something like that?
Elagabalus?
Elagabalus, yeah.
Oh boy, are we getting into that one?
Do you want to?
Well, we got another hour here.
When you were talking about Roman propaganda and people saying things like that, I know that a lot of people say that this particular emperor's, a lot of the things that we point to as maybe, oh, this person might have been trans, a lot of it might have been propaganda from their political opponents.
That's absolutely possible, yeah. So that is a complex one. So when you look at the historical sources, there's people saying one of the things Elagabalus said was,
Oh, could you
"Call me
give like a
not Lord,"
summary of
for-
Elagabalus for like?
Yeah, yeah. So Elagabalus was Roman emperor from 218 to 222 CE, so 4-year period, and was the descendant of God, what's his name? Septimius Severus, who was the first African Roman emperor. He was from like modern day Libya, and so Elagabalus was also African.
Septimus
which-
Severus sounds like a cross between a Skyrim and a Harry Potter name.
More like those characters sound
Yeah, I was
like
gonna say
Yeah.
they're probably derived from that person.
So sorry, that
Yeah,
was it.
Backwards.
Aside.
Backwards.
Romans are kind of a little bit before Harry Potter. But yes, so the Severan dynasty was Septimius Severus became emperor, and then after that, his sons Caracalla and Geta took over. They hated each other. Caracalla killed his brother Geta and became the sole emperor. He himself died. His general Macrinus became emperor, and Caracalla in particular was well liked by the soldiers, which was really important in terms of staying alive as an emperor, because it was not uncommon for the soldiers to just kill an emperor they didn't like. And so Caracalla was really well respected by the soldiers. Macrinus was not, and so he and his son Diadumenianus was Macrinus was emperor, and Diadumenianus was kind of like his backup, right? But he was pretty young, and lots of intrigue, lots of battles, murder stuff. Macrinus dies, and the Severan family decide, no, we want to be in charge again. So they put Elagabalus in charge, who was related to Caracalla. They claimed Elagabalus was his son, which was not true, but they were related. Elagabalus goes to Rome and sends word to Rome beforehand that anybody who sided with Macrinus was going to be given amnesty, which was a really big deal because just like it wasn't uncommon for soldiers to murder the emperor, it was also not uncommon for the emperor to murder his political opponents. So it would not have been unusual for Elagabalus to show up in town, round up everybody who sided with Macrinus, and kill them all. This would not have been unusual, but Elagabalus decided to grant amnesty to them. And so they're like, wow, this is great. This is really exciting. It must be a return of the Severan dynasty. It must be the beginning of a new golden age and a new temperate and measured emperor. And boy, were they wrong. So Elagabalus gets to town and takes control, and it's very difficult to suss out the details of her life. I use she, her pronouns in referring to her, not because I think she's trans, but because it's no more or less correct than saying he, him. We'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. Anyway, so she gets in charge. She rules for a few years. People don't like her very much, and one of the things that she did was declare that women could serve in the Senate, which was very unusual. That had never been done before. So her mother and her grandmother...
Good for her, queen
sat
shit,
in the
honestly.
Senate. I know, right? Her mother and her grandmother sat in the Senate, and sat in the Senate as men, which I wish we knew more about them, because that's interesting. We could dig more into that, but we don't. By the way, everything I'm about to tell you is questionable because the sources are very very unreliable. So anyway, she's emperor for a few years. She has 5 different marriages to 4 different women. She married the same woman twice, and this was Roman marriage was still monogamous, but divorce and remarriage was not really a big deal. People did it all the time. So it was unusual for her to have 5 different marriages in 4 years, but she wouldn't have been looked down upon for that. It's just a little unusual. apparently also had 2 different husbands, both athletes, I think, and
She knows how to pick them.
I know, right? Bisexual icon right there. And she had all sorts of lavish festivals. She was the priest of an Eastern sun god cult called... The emperor is called Elagabalus, even though that wasn't her name. It was Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, but there are like 7 or 8 emperors named Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, so we just call her Elagabalus because it makes it simpler. And the god is also called Elagabalus, but I just call the god that the god has, but it's also the name that the emperor has. So I'm going to call the person Elagabalus and the god Heliogabalus, just to make it easier, right? This is confusing enough as it is. So she's the priest of the Eastern sun god cult, of the sun god Heliogabalus. And the Romans thought that was weird. They weren't really into this this Eastern cult. It wasn't unusual for, like, if the Romans conquered you, they would often just bring your god into their pantheon. Because it's like, it's easier to conquer someone if you're like, no, don't worry, we didn't murder your god. He's just part of the club now. By the way, where's your tribute? Send us gold. So, like, it wasn't unusual for that to be the case, but they did think it was weird and off-putting. Especially with the whole, like, gender transgression side of things. So...
A power play, but a weird one.
In a way. So she was, like, the, like, main priest of this cult, kind of like the pope of the cult. And so it's a very weird process to see this person becoming in charge. It's almost like if, like, it's hard to make sense of how unusual this situation would have been for the Romans, but so she is the priest of a, like, not foreign because it's still part of Rome, but considered foreign cult, comes to Rome, marries a bunch of different people, including a Vestal Virgin, which is like an ancient nun, so to speak, which was like, no, we don't do that, but she decided to do so anyway. Wears makeup, dresses like a lady, prostitutes herself at the brothel, if the sources are to be believed. And the whole thing is just like, it's not... Like, the Romans didn't like this. And so after 4 years, they'd had enough. She made her nephew, Severus Alexander, heir. The military liked him better because he seemed like a, more temperate person. And so eventually they murder Elagabalus, and he becomes the new emperor. Everything I told you is extremely God, stop burping, Sophie. Everything I told you is extremely questionable because we only have 3 sources on this. There's Cassius Dio, who is largely considered a credible historian, but he served under Severus Alexander, who hated Elagabalus. So everything he says about Elagabalus, we can't really take it at face value, because if he, like... Severus Alexander hated Elagabalus. Severus Alexander was Cassius Dio's boss. And so that wouldn't be good for his career to praise the emperor. So he's got to go out of his way to make her look as bad as he can. So that's Cassius Dio. We also have Herodian, who is not great in terms of, like, historical reputation. He's not super credible. He's contradicted pretty often. But he's the least biased toward Elagabalus and probably the most charitable toward her, but still slanders her up, right, and down. And then there's the Historia Augusta, which was written like 100 years later, and, like, a lot of people think it's, like, almost like ancient satire, almost like a collection of Onion articles. And so we don't have any good sources on this emperor. So we've got slander and, like, blatant lies and just somebody with a bad historical reputation. So was she trans? Well, we can't really say at the end. Like, it's there's lots of historical slander, but nobody's really slandered in a way that says, like, they wanted to be a woman and they wanted to get bottom surgery. Like, this is not a thing that's ever mentioned about anybody else. So that is
was
interesting
part of
enough to
the
be
slander,
noteworthy.
right?
Yeah, yeah. So that is noteworthy, and that is interesting, and is worth looking at. But it doesn't mean she was trans. We don't know at the end of the day, and with the sources we have, we're never gonna know. And that kind of sucks, but that, I mean, it's not... It's complicated too, because the sources make her out to be a really bad person. Like, she butchered babies. She would have parties where she would murder all of her guests. She, stuff that I don't want to bring up for content warning purposes. She did a lot of bad stuff. And so, if the sources are to be believed, she is trans and also evil as hell, like mind-blowingly evil. If the sources are not to be believed, he is slandered in the historical reputation and was just kind of a weird guy that the Romans didn't think too kindly of. So it is a very complicated subject to explore.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Question for you.
Sure.
You may have already mentioned this, and I apologize if I missed it, but how long
I know, that was
did
a
it
lot.
take?
It's okay.
No. I'm just trying to soak it all in like a sponge. It's great. How long did it take to go from her reign to getting killed? Because I'm thinking if she's really that evil, that it wouldn't take very long for the reign to end. And I guess unless there was some kind of conspiracy going on, but
You said it was like
have any idea?
People who are evil don't usually stay in charge of countries very long, do they? She lasted 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
one
yeah.
presidential term.
Yeah. Yeah, so... I mean, there were other terrible people who were in charge of the empire in different times as well. That's also complicated, like Caligula, for example, who was also heavily slandered in the historical record. Like, sometimes they just made stuff up, and sometimes it's just kind of exaggerated too. Like, there's a famous story that Caligula made his horse consul. Consul was, like, before the emperors, consul was the highest rank in the Roman state. And after the emperors, they still had consuls to do like kind of like administrative stuff, but they were almost like vice presidents in a way. They were subordinate to the emperor, but they were still a supportive role. So when Caligula made his horse consul, is that because he was super crazy and just out of control and just didn't know what was going on? Or was that a flex of him to say, hey Senate, you are worthless, I'm going to do whatever I want, and it doesn't matter, anybody could be consul, my horse could be consul, you could be consul, it's going to be the same thing because I'm going to push my agenda through and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Which one is it? I don't know.
Maybe a little of both.
Little column A, little column B.
Could be. So yeah, I wish, on one hand, I wish the Romans didn't love, like, trash-talking each other so much. On the other hand, it's often quite entertaining, so...
They at least were good at it.
Totally.
It kind of
This is
reminds
like
me
a
a
Mean
little
Girls
bit
burn
of
book.
reminds me a little bit of things you read in tabloids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's history, and that's kind of fun.
I'm sure somebody will, like, hundreds of years from now, people will look at, like, the National Enquirer or something to analyze its role in shaping historical narratives.
It's like, well, we don't know if Bat Boy was real or not, but he sure had a cultural impact.
Now, this is
Sure
all
did.
questionable, but there was a Bat Boy.
Look, Bat Boy is real, okay? In this house, we stand Bat Boy.
Mothman, Bat Boy, all of the above. Any cryptid, really.
Absolute legend.
Bat Boy's the true
People just love the
trans.
drama of it all.
What'd you say, Celeste?
Oh, I just said people just love the drama of it all. People just love the drama.
That's part of the fun of it, too.
It's part of the fun.
And that's part of why, like, Roman history in particular is so awesome. They've left us so much in terms of material. Like, the Greeks have, the Persians have, a lot of cultures have, the Egyptians have, but you don't get a, like, view of what life was like in Roman society that's as thorough as we get from the Romans. I misspoke there a little bit. We don't get a view into what daily life was like in any society, in the West at least, until the printing press shows up, that we do as the Romans. Like, they give us so much information about how their political system works, about how they trash talked each other, about what their laws were like. Even like the graffiti that we get from Pompeii is just spectacular. You see, even like there's graffiti in Egypt, because the Romans ruled Egypt for a while. And so there's graffiti in Egypt of tourists showing up, writing on the walls right near hieroglyphics, saying, like, I don't know what this means. Which is hilarious. And there's parts in Pompeii, there's one piece of graffiti in Pompeii where somebody says, like, the direct translation is, like, I, Secundus, took a piss here. Which is amazing. It's amazing.
Goals,
so much fun.
honestly.
Just so humans being humans.
Exactly. So you get that sort of thing. There was a loaf of bread that was discovered in an oven in Pompeii. This loaf of bread, because of the eruption and because of the way the ash fell on the town, this loaf of bread was preserved. Can't eat it now, of course, but the shape of it was preserved. There's a stamp on it that shows who baked that loaf of bread. We know it was a slave. We know the name of the slave owner based on the bakery in which it was made. Through analyzing this loaf of bread, we know the ingredients that were used to make this loaf of bread. From there, we can piece together a recipe on how the Romans made bread. There are these little vignettes of what daily life was like in Pompeii and in Rome in general, that, like, it's quite touching and beautiful in a way, where it's like you see just these little day-to-day it's almost like, I don't know, like, we're all trans here, y'all have played New Vegas, I'm sure, right? So you walk through there and you go into a house.
We need a moment for that. I need to appreciate that for a moment.
I know my audience. So, you go into a house, an abandoned house, and through, like, you can see that there's, like, a visual story that's told through the things you find. So there's, like, two people lying in bed, and one of them is holding a shotgun, and there's the combination to their safe in their hand, right? So, like, through this we can piece together, okay, this is what must have happened, this is what this person's final moments must have been like. And we see that in Pompeii as well. You go through, like, and it's not
Sorry, can I just take a moment? I love how you used Fallout New Vegas to explain archaeology.
It works, though. It works,
We
though.
just bring it down a level for you trans folks out there. We get on your level. Are you with me? It's New Vegas. We got this? Okay. Now we can move forward. I love it.
You gotta speak to people in a language they're gonna understand.
Oh, I love it.
So, but that's why those games are so intriguing. And that's why Fallout 3 is worth playing, despite the story not being that great, because you still have that kind of, like, visual storytelling. And that's what you get in going through a place like Pompeii as well. You see, like, these vignettes of people living daily life and what happened when their life came to an end in this, like, one disastrous moment where everything was buried in ash, or when the bombs went off. So it's more appropriate than just me talking to trans girls, but it's a similar event. It's a natural disaster as opposed to a human caused disaster, but it's still the same sort of thing.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. So,
Listeners, Marcia has thrown on a nice cozy blanket. to stay
It's
warm
chilly
in
here this time of
November.
year.
Important updates.
Yes. Well, the
Same.
listeners can't see it, so I have to make sure they know that Marcia's getting cozy.
You didn't have to call me out like that.
What's wrong with having a blanket on?
Nothing.
Nothing.
It just makes fantastic podcasting.
Yeah.
There you
Exactly.
go. There you go.
So, what's
What's next on the agenda for you? Do you have more videos coming out? Are you planning on
I do.
expanding your scope of influence? Are you planning on just continuing what you're doing because you feel like it's at a good spot where it's at?
I do have more videos coming. I have, I wrote a script today, a short one, on, there's this museum that, decided to refer to Elagabalus using she, her pronouns, and everyone keeps messaging me to be like, hey, you see this? You see this? Fine, I'll do a video on it. Stop bothering me. So I'm going to do that. And then I have the
I saw
one
that while we were chatting. I did some Google searching and I saw that. Yeah.
Not going to get into that now because the new video is coming out soon. Spoiler alert. At least I hope it is. God. So there's that. I have the one on Lucian we were talking about before. There is another one that I talked about that I've been doing for friggin' years at this point, which is a deep dive into the nearly 10,000 year history of the worship of a transgender African.
That sounds really cool. I'm really
Yeah.
excited
I
for that
know
one.
it does.
Yeah.
I know it does. I'm really excited about it too. I'm really excited to bring this to a. The script is like 55 pages long at this point, and I'm nowhere near done. It's a problem. So,
Is it going to be a 3-hour-long video?
Not inconceivable. So,
Because I love throwing those on while I'm doing stuff around the house.
thank God for people like you, then. So, there's that. There's another video on eunuchs that I'm going to do, which is not strictly trans history, but it's a related topic that I keep getting people asking me how people eunuched themselves in the ancient world.
Oh,
And-
eunuchs, right. I thought you said
Yeah.
like UNIX, like the,
Oh.
like the computer thing.
No, not quite. Not quite.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't fit all of the trans stereotypes.
Okay.
So that's the collection of videos. I've got a long list of research.
I think it'll be
topics I
really
wanna
interesting
do.
to learn about eunuchs because that's something that like was very common for a really, really long time, but like I don't know much about it.
It's not always the most pleasant stuff that I dug up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps unsurprisingly, because not all eunuchs were willing participants. But yeah, good time there. I think it's interesting too, if not entirely pleasant. I also have a long list of topics I want to get to, which, well, who knows? Who knows? Hopefully I live long enough to get to them all. And then I don't know, I got a bunch of other stuff going on too. I do voice coaching for trans women. I got a novel coming out next year. I got lots going on.
Wow, you stay busy.
Can you tell us more
I
about these
also
other
have
things?
ADHD.
Yeah, that tracks. Yeah. Tell us more about your voice coaching and your novel, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Please and thank
so-
you. I should have said that.
Absolutely. Don't tell me what to do. You're not my mom. Voice coaching. We'll start with that. So, I work with trans girls who don't like their voice to help them find a voice that they do like. Another thing I do SEO for a living. I have an SEO business that I've been running for like 12 years now. And one of my clients is a speech therapist in DC. And we never met in person. We only consulted over the phone. And when I, convinced her to give me her money, we were talking about what she wants to see on her website. And she's like, oh, I want a page for stuttering, for this, that, the other. Okay, cool, whatever. And I also want a page for transgender voice training. Cool, okay. And then she starts like explaining to me what trans people are and why they need voice coaching. And I'm like, what's she doing? Why are you doing this? And then it dawned on me that we never spoke in person. We only ever spoke over the phone. I never outed myself because it just wasn't relevant. And then, so as she's explaining to me all this stuff, I'm like, oh, that's cool. You know, as a trans person, I think that's awesome. And she's like, what? What? You're trans? Oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, she's like, how'd you get your voice like that? I'm like, I don't know, I just did. Do you naturally sound like that? No, I definitely don't. And so she's like, she's losing her mind. And, you know, not to brag or anything, but we knocked it out of the park SEO wise, got her lots of new business, more than she could handle. And we're chatting one day, because one of the things we do is write blog articles for her. So I'm like, you know, what do you want to see for your blog articles the next couple of coming months? And she's like, I want this, that, and the other. And also I want you to take care of my voice training clients, because I don't have the time to do it anymore. You're sending me too much new business. I'm like, what? I don't know how to do that. And she's like, yes, you do. You're doing it now. You just don't know that you know. So let me teach you what you know, and then you can teach what you don't know that you know to other people. So I like, she's a dear friend, and I say
She
this
sounds
playfully,
like
but
a
she
gem.
bullied me into it.
And the rest you could say is history.
Ba-dum-bum. There we go.
Thank you.
Put a little bow on that. Send it.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I have a like pretty wide sliding scale, because I know for a lot of girls, like, a big barrier to employment is voice dysphoria and like voice incongruence. And so, you know, I try to make it as accessible as I can. But it's a lot of fun. It's fun work.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I know there are a lot of cis women who do trans voice training as well, and I don't think that's a problem. I don't think it's a bad thing. The problem is they can't demonstrate the difference. They can't do this, right? So they can't say, like, look, this is what your voice sounds right now, and this is what happens when you train your voice. This is how you can shift your voice into something that's different. But they're not going to be able to sound like this unless they start taking testosterone, and if they do, they're probably not as cis as they think they are.
Yeah, my voice trainer was a cis woman, and I only went to her for like a 12-session thing, and she was so lovely. But yeah, it's really cool.
Do you have any tips for people that are still struggling with their voice right now?
One of the most important things is there's videos out there, there's different sources, like, without commenting on the quality overall, some stuff is good, some stuff is not. There is some good stuff, and if you can figure it out on your own, I think that's awesome. I'm all for that. But one of the most important things is, if you're going to try to guide it, try to do like kind of self-guided training, to not rush through the exercises that you're doing, but spend some time feeling how they feel. A lot of girls will just sit there and like record their own voice and then like listen back to it and be like, oh, this voice sounds terrible. And it's like, yes, of course it does to you, because nobody likes their own voice on recording. I don't, and I edit videos of myself all day. Not all day, but like I will spend multiple hours editing a video and think like, God, I sound terrible. I clearly don't, not to sound cocky, but like people wouldn't hire me as their voice coach if I didn't have like somewhat decent voice. So like that is, and I don't know which of you edits your own videos, but like you probably get the same thing, right? Where like you all sound lovely, but at the same time listening to your voice back on like recordings
It's a nightmare.
is terrible.
Yeah,
it's
so
terrible.
tough.
I
Oh,
complain
God.
about it all the time to the other two. I'm just like, I sound horrible. And they're like,
yeah.
shut up.
Yeah, it's like, no, you don't. Like, as a voice coach, no, you don't. But you're going to sound bad to yourself, because that's just
Right.
how it works. Because, like, we don't really hear our own voices as much as we feel them. So you get that, like, detached. First of all, the, like, baseline, everyone hates the sound of their own voice on recording. Trans, cis, I don't care who you are. And so, like, there's that baseline. On top of that, you're, like, trying to make sense of what you're hearing and trying to fit it into what you're feeling, and it's so incongruent that it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So there's that issue. And then on top of that, you stack gender dysphoria. You can't win. So at the end of the day, it's much more important to feel how your voice feels, and to, like, if you're going to do exercises, do it mindfully. Try to pay attention to where do you feel your voice in your body, and not from a, like, how, you know, ask yourself how does it feel, but not in a, like, it feels good, it feels bad sort of thing, like, not from a qualitative judgment perspective, but from a how does my voice feel as it's shifting perspective. A lot of people talk about resonance. It is important. It's not the only thing, but it is important. When I use this voice, it resonates down here in my chest, and I can, like, very acutely feel it in my chest. It's very obvious. And if you've been through testosterone-driven puberty, you will know what that feeling feels like. And so if that's your default voice, you might not... Why am I still talking like that? If that's your default... I catch myself doing that all the time. If that's your default voice, you're not really thinking about how your voice feels, because it's just what you do, right? Like, you don't have to think about it. And so taking some time to feel, okay, well, this is how my voice feels currently. This is what I'm going for. I'm going for, you know, ideally feel it resonating here. That is a much more subtle experience than feeling it down here. So if you're feeling an absence of chest resonance, that is a sign you're probably going in the right direction. If you're not going into falsetto, pardon me. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, especially because, like, universally, trans women have spent a decent chunk of their lives dissociating from how they feel inside their own bodies, right? We've all got that feeling, so it's not always easy to work with girls and coach them through that process of, like, no, you have to feel what's going on in your body. That's a real uphill battle for a lot of the girls I work with. But if we can kind of get through that sort of barrier, then then you can start getting into, okay, here's where I'm at right now. I don't like it. That's okay. We have to understand where we're starting, and we recognize we want to get here, but we got to know where we're starting from so we can know where we're going. I think I rambled a bit there, but I hope that all made sense.
No, yeah, that's a lot of what you said is what I heard from my voice coach. You know, a lot, at least for me, voice training was like 80% my own mental barriers and just having an issue, just conquering over my own self.
Yep.
And then, like, I still get voice dysphoria pretty regularly, but at some point I have to realize that it's mostly just, like, not giving myself a very good look, because, like, I've not been misgendered over the phone in, like, a year and a half, so, like,
yeah.
I know I'm doing something right, and that it's probably just me being really hard on myself.
That was me.
Yeah,
I was
if I had an
working...
air horn, I would go off right now for you, Celeste.
Yay!
Ditto.
When I started, I was working a receptionist job, and I kept on getting ma'amed and she heard on the phone, and I was like, oh, I guess this is working. That's cool.
Nice.
You kind of don't believe it when it starts happening at first.
Yeah, it's weird.
Right?
Yeah. And, like, you assume people are just being nice at first.
Being nice.
But then you're over the phone, and it's like, no, there's no, like, even if you do want to be nice, there's no, like, visual confirmation that you look like a girl. So it's like, okay, well, that I must be doing something right then. But I echo what you're saying 100%, Celeste, that, like, I sometimes get voice dysphoria still. That's absurd. I make my living as a professional voice person thing. So, like, that's ridiculous. But dysphoria doesn't always make sense.
What I think is really fun about going through voice training and having, you know, done it on my own, but also I know a lot of others have done their own too, is you notice that you start to have that muscle memory kick in. So you're not really thinking about it. However, I love that you talked about being mindful of how it feels when the air's kind of traveling through that cavity, for lack of a better word.
The orolaryngeal cavity?
Yeah, that's the one. Hey, that was a better word. I didn't have a lack of better. You had a better word for it. Especially in the morning when I wake up, and we always, you know, everyone knows, like, morning voice. Not warmed up yet. The muscles are not loose enough yet, but being very mindful of how things feel as air passes through your larynx and false folds and all that good stuff. And maybe doing some silly little noises to yourself definitely seems to help in the morning, I've noticed. So
Absolutely. And like some of my exercises I'll do just before a recording session, just to make sure that I sound kind of decent when I'm going in. I mean, I don't control my voice as heavily as I used to, just because I don't really care anymore. But you know, when I first, you know, when you first start transitioning, you crave the approval of your gender a lot more than you do after you've been out for a while. Now I don't really care as much as I used to, but doesn't mean I'm walking around talking like this all day. There's still a pretty stark difference between that voice and this voice. I just
No, but I'm definitely going to be
trust
using that voice if I'm reading a book and we need a character voice.
Yeah, in my videos, I all the voices you hear are mine, and so like when I'm reading the primary sources, I use this voice just to kind of differentiate.
It's like how have you ever listened to Hardcore History with Dan Carlin?
Yeah.
Yeah, he always has that different voice for the quotes that he reads. Bit like that.
Yeah, he does. It's yeah. I mean, why not? Save me money on having to hire a voice actor.
Exactly. Why hire a voice actor when you've got like a dozen yourself?
use every part of the throat.
I can't even. I have a hard time going back to my old voice. I can't drop it low enough anymore to where I was, at least. It's very strange.
Well, if you're not using it, it's like a muscle, and
I'm
it'll
not
go
using
away.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always had a fairly flexible voice. So, I mean, when I really get into it, I can actually switch in the middle of a sentence, which is a lot of fun. But I've always liked doing impressions and stuff. So
Me too. It's fun,
I
isn't
think I
it?
took to this stuff sooner than absolutely. What impressions do you do?
What ones do I don't do?
What's your favorite?
When I was a kid,
now you've done it.
when I was like in high school, I had that scene where Golem talks to Smeagol in the Two Towers memorized, and I did the two voices. That one was really fun. When I was really young, I did Jar Jar Binks, but nobody liked that one.
I can do Jar Jar Binks. I was just gonna say I have one of his speeches when he's like in the Senate talking to everybody.
Beautiful.
Can we hear it?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Need the water.
What the hell am I doing with
Dear listeners, we are excited.
It's perfect.
Wait, stop. Disney, don't sue us. That's a Disney property now. Don't do the whole thing, please.
Oh no.
We don't have any money, Disney.
This is a real voice actor. This is just an impression.
I promise I'm not Ahmed Best. I'll have to just read some copy pasta next time.
That was so good. Oh, I would love to
very
hear
good.
the Navy SEAL copy pasta in Jar Jar Binks' voice.
What the fuck did you just fucking say to me, you little bitch? I have you know. That's all I know about it. That's all I can remember from it. Jesus Christ.
And that's
That's our
Transform, folks.
intro.
Yeah, you could just put some background music to that and that can be your new theme song.
Perfect.
Don't threaten me with a good time. It's gonna happen now.
Good Lord. Good Lord.
Sophie, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been lovely.
you for having me.
Can you give
been lots of
us
fun.
your where people can find you on YouTube and whatever other social media? Do with some shameless self-promotion, please.
Absolutely. I'm quite shameless. You can find me on YouTube at Transgender Ancient History. The channel is called We Have Always Existed. You can find me on Blue Sky at Transgender History, on Instagram /threads at queer.trans.writer.sophie. You can see I do SEO. And I don't know, those are the main ones.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I mean, there's Twitter too,
Beautiful.
but who uses Twitter anymore?
Right?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You mean X?
No, it's the site formerly known as Twitter.
No.
It is always
I know, it'll always be
morally
Twitter.
correct to dead name corporations.
Correct.
They're not people.
That's true. That's true.
Absolutely.
Little taste of Elon's own medicine.
Take that, Elon Musk.
Yeah, we got you in a trans video that no one from your team will ever see, probably.
Hopefully not.
Probably.
Well, never say never. Never say never, I guess. Sophie, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always like to do the sign off a little bit before we're actually done with recording in case we have any extra thoughts or things that we need to say. We have time to do that.
Something always happens after we sign off that has to be thrown back in. Always.
Yeah, that's true.
But this was
Any
a
more-
lovely, lovely conversation.
I think so. It was a lot of fun.
We got to jump around. It was lovely to get to talk to you a bit. I'm really excited to check out some more of your videos.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you.
Same here.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe. All the cool kids are doing.
I'll hit the little bell. Bing.
Yeah.
Get
the
notifications.
I was
notification.
already subscribed, but I need to hit the little bell now, so I'll do that.
Yeah, absolutely. This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. I love how that's like become a meme in and of itself. Like people will just say this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends even if they're not, just because it's like so ubiquitous. Has anyone ever played Raid Shadow Legends? I haven't.
No.
No.
I don't know.
I knew somebody who had a like advertising deal with them though. Or maybe not them, maybe it was some other mobile game. And got like $10,000 from people. From that referral link.
Jeez, maybe I should
Hell yeah.
like trash talk them though. Maybe then. Sorry, Raid Shadow Legends. Yeah, I totally play your game. Give
Would
me
you
10
like
grand.
to be a trans spotting sponsor?
Yeah, we'll do our best there.
Ugh.
And they
Are there any
anyway,
other
this
little
is-
promotions we want to
this
do
is off topic,
before
but,
we sign off?
Oh,
Okay, sorry.
he was telling me that he could go and look and see like this person was referred to this link, this person was referred to this link, and this person, and so on, and could see how much each of them spent on the game.
Oh, wild.
Yeah, and there was like 5 people who were spending like thousands of dollars, and he had referred to like 200 maybe. But of those 5, the 5 were responsible for like 98% of his referral income.
That's wild.
That's what they go for. They go for those
Wild.
whales, those people who spend way too much. And usually they can't really afford it, but
Yeah,
It's terrifying.
I've heard that it's also like a pretty common phenomenon for like little kids will like sign up for a game and just like buy a whole bunch of credits, not really realizing what they're doing, and like rack up a whole bunch of money on like their parents' credit card, and then they check their statement. And it's like, who spent $800 on Pokemon Go? Well, it turns out my kid did.
Yeah, in the last couple years, there was like a big court ruling about that happening in Fortnite, and there was like this whole big like reimbursal to people, and it was a whole thing.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's
system's broken, dude.
Wild.
capitalism.
Capitalism,
Isn't it the
ho.
best?
It's
Yeah, that stuff sucks.
It sucks because capitalism moves faster than we as government people can make decisions. You know, you've got every 2 or 4 years you can make a decision about somebody you're going to send to vote for, but then every quarter corporations are making decisions on how they're going to screw you over. So
Pretty much.
It's almost
And
like it's
they're
rigged
also
from the
spending-
get-go.
Yeah, exactly. They're spending a lot of money to make sure the people that you vote for, regardless of what party you're voting for, have their best interests at heart. So
that's true. That's
government
true.
sucks.
Clicking through all these links, I've followed you on Twitter for forever. My brain is making connections it wasn't making. I'm so sorry.
Okay,
I'm scatterbrained.
that's all right. I'll find it in my heart to forgive you somehow.
Pretty sure we're all
you.
neurodivergent here.
Oh my god. Oh, Jesus.
Who are you on Twitter?
Sapphic Celeste.
Subtle.
Do that SEO.
Yeah.
I don't see ya.
Am I shadow banned again? That's possible.
So if you search is just for your name on Google, it's not the first hit. I don't want to know it. SEO search engine optimization. Come on now.
Look, I am not the most popular trans writer named Sophie Edwards who lives in Ontario, Canada.
Really?
And that is a problem.
Wow.
So you Google Sophie Edwards queer writer, and like I haven't done this recently, but somebody else shows up, and it's like, good for you, but also like, God damn it.
God damn it.
This is my
I'll
territory.
be honest, I Googled my name before I got it changed, just to see how many results there were.
Oh, I've never done that actually. I should probably check
Really?
that.
I used to do it a whole bunch. There was one thing I found once I Googled my dead name, and it was like, the full phrase was, dead name is that which is dead name is that which is those who are not he.
What?
I have no idea. I have no idea, but somebody wrote that for some reason.
Interesting. That's very interesting. When I Googled my dead name, I found out I owned a horse ranch down in Tennessee. But it wasn't me. It was somebody with that name.
So, when are we going to party at your place down in Tennessee?
Really soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'll be awaiting my invite with bated breath.
That's right. You'll be part of the Transpotting alumni invites.
There we go.
That would be so fun.
Awesome.
All of the guests in one show together. How awesome would that be?
In one horse ranch,
just found out-
riding
In
horses.
one horse ranch. I just found out after Googling my current name, first and last name, that I actually am a bridal shop.
You sure are. Look at you.
Look at me go.
Go figure. It's a lot of fun to Google your name.
Okay,
and
now
find
I'm
out who
doing
you are.
mine. Sorry, this will cut all of this out of the episode.
No, we won't. We're not going to do that.
Nothing comes up with mine. I'm not.
Everything is
let's go with-
content.
Well, if
Oh,
I
I'm
Google
on the first page now. That's
DuckDuckGo,
good.
our website is Transpotting is the fourth one that comes up. Fourth result under my name.
Nice.
It's not bad.
We're making it, baby.
Nice.
Oh, there's a river called Rowan River in Ireland. I'm not surprised about that. Oh, hey, yeah, fourth hit is Transpotting for me as well.
Hell yeah.
I hear
Look at that.
I hear in that river they're not allowed to use motors.
You know, okay, so here's the funny thing is that I didn't decide, so I changed my last name with my spouse when we both changed our name. We're both trans. They are non-binary. And we decided to choose our own last name together, and we decided that before I had chosen the name River. And so right before we went into like the video courtroom thing to do our name change, because it's all during COVID, right? I was like, you understand that I'm going to permanently have a pun in my name, right? And they're just like, son of a bitch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's trans culture right there, so there you go.
Hey, there you go.
SB Edwards is my author name, and sbedwards.com was taken, so I did sbedwards.co, and then I discovered that .gay is a thing, so now my website is sbedwards.gay.
I need that.
Beautiful.
Oh, dang.
It's
we
very
need
important
to
that
shop
everybody
for
know
some of
that.
these. Oh, that is amazing.
I want that.
Right?
I want
We
the
need more
.k.
domain names with .gay. Yeah.
They're not that expensive. And .lgbt is a thing as well. I
Yeah,
think.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
I just like
Look at
.k
the tab.
better.
Some of them are ridiculous. There's .photographer, which is like,
That's too much.
who's gonna type that in?
Three letters is better.
Yeah, .photo. Okay, I'm going with that. .photographer. I'm sorry. No, that's dumb.
Yeah.
.fa
Yeah.
sounds delicious.
Oh Lord.
I was telling somebody earlier that, I joined an improv group, right? And I was talking about why I like improv so much more than stand-up. The main reason is in improv, you don't have to be funny. You can just be silly.
I mean, my girlfriend and I are basically like our own two-person improv troupe. With we bounce back and forth like all the time. It's ridiculous. She's also trans, and it's just nonstop. It's ridiculous.
It's fun.
I feel bad for anybody who has to spend time with us.
Oh, I do too.
You feel bad for anybody who has to spend time
No,
with me? Are you feeling bad for yourself right now?
Yes. Well, I'm very pleased that I got to spend time with you.
This has been a lot of fun.
It was fantastic.
How do I keep in touch with you?
Well, if you hit up the contact@transbotting.com email, that's going to hit all of us. That's also originally, it was broken while you weren't getting any notifications for our guest submission. So, hey, potential guests out there, I'll be reaching out to you soon. I'm really sorry. It's been like months, but I had no idea it was broken. I just thought we were not that popular. I am on Blue Sky as Cupcake Hellsword, and also on Instagram as Cupcake Hellsword. I'm also a metalcore recording artist by the name of Bury the River. New song came out today, actually, so go check it out.
Oh shit, did it?
Cool.
It did.
I'll have to check it
I'm
out.
suppressed in all the algorithms and all of the social media, so no one's seeing my posts. It's fine.
I will retweet it right fucking now.
I'll come check it out.
Yes.
You can find me on
Check it
Instagram at Oh No Marcia. That's about the only place that I'm kind of active, and even then I'm only on it like once every other week. I've kind of been taking a break from social media, mainly for my mental health. And also just because I feel like the social media kind of sucks. So,
It kind of does.
Yeah,
honestly.
it kind of does. It kind of sucks.
Blue Sky is nice, but I don't know. I wonder if it's going to take off. We'll see.
I feel like it's too much of a walled garden at this point.
It is, but it's one of the things that kind of makes it nice.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I don't know, like, Twitter's bad, and it always was.
Twitter
Like,
always
it's-
was bad,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah,
people found
it
good
sucks.
things on it.
Yeah. I mean, I was on there, but, like, it's not a good place.
Yeah.
And
And you can find me on, I still mostly post on Twitter. I'm sorry. I have a hard time switching platforms. I have some of the others, but I'm at Sapphic Celeste there. On Instagram, I am at Tato.chips. That's TAYTO.CHIPZ.
I can't find y'all. I keep looking them up. I can't find y'all. Can you, like, drop links in the chat?
Yeah. You already follow me on Twitter, so.
Do I? Okay.
And that's really mostly what I'm doing right now. I've not been posting much anywhere social media wise. That's just been pretty burned out on that kind of stuff.
It's
Just vibing.
It's
just
easy
vibing.
to. It's easy to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, I don't know. The world can be pretty depressing, and sometimes it's nice to just kind of disconnect from that and focus on taking care of yourself. There's nothing wrong with that.
For sure. For sure.
You only get one you, so take care of them. This has been River Mom.
Thanks, Mom Riv.
Thanks,
Hey,
River Mom.
anytime. I'm also the server. Oh yeah, that's right. You have a Discord server. Come join our Discord
shit.
server.
Oh, okay.
I am the apparently appointed server mom there, as I can't help but interact with people. So yeah, we've got a pretty fun little community of 50 and growing, I think. And feel free to join it. It's a public server. There will always be a link to it in our description of each episode. So check out the link and you can join our Discord server. Sophie, I can just send you a link if you want to join. You don't have to wait until this gets released next Friday.
I can send you the link right now.
Sure, me as well.
Me as well.
Do it. It's pure chaos, but also pure love, and I love it so much.
I do too. The people
A
on our Discord are
trans-oriented
so
space that's
lovely.
chaotic.
I need to hang out there more often. I'm just so bad at keeping up with Discord.
I pop in every now and then and say what's up.
Yeah, it's the same with my own Discord server for my Patreon supporters. I feel like I should interact with them more. I always feel like I'm not giving my supporters enough.
I feel the same too. We've got our Patreon going, and it's kind of mainly to help folks who like us kind of support us. But I feel like I want to start to get some more content in there, and
Yes.
not forget about it. We haven't forgotten about you, Patreon supporters. We love you.
Yes, thank you so
Shout out
much.
to our
all just
Patreon
really busy.
supporters. Do you want to read out their names?
I don't. So I actually had someone message me and say, "Hey, I actually don't want my name being read out. If you could not do that." So
okay.
I think maybe we should err on the side of
So
caution to say, if you support our Patreon,
All
thank
of
you.
Thank you.
Normally you read out the names and things, but not everybody wants that. So
I mean, look at it's the trans community. You know, people might not be using they're not be living fully as their true selves
true.
yet, so they might not
true,
you know, expect it to be read out in a public kind of, because these don't just go on Patreon, these go on our podcast platforms too. So we've got to be aware of that when we're listing people's names. Make sure we don't make them upset, because it's not just to our subscribers, it's to everyone that can find us.
True.
And I appreciate all of you.
I do too.
I also appreciate my Patreons and supporters. So thanks, y'all.
Where
Y'all
can
are
we
wonderful
find your
people.
Patreon?
Well, you can go to patreon.com/SBEdwards. And, yeah, if you want to give me money, I won't say no.
You heard it here. Give Sophie money, please.
You heard it here first.
She's
folks.
really cool.
She is really
I do
cool.
my best.
She's really cool.
All right, thank you. You want to
Okay.
wrap this up?
Thanks again.
Y'all aren't so hot yourself.
Hey.
Pew 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 pew.
I've got these that can't snap with these on. So
My
don't
drum kit's in the
have
other
my-
room, so I
I
can't do
can't.
Okay.
the rim shot, but...
sure. I think
Anyway.
we've got enough for like an outro. I'm gonna stop recording. If everyone could just hang out for like 2 or 3 minutes to make sure the uploads of your videos go through. Don't exit your window yet. That'd be great.